Welcome back. Get comfortable wherever you are. Pull the blanket a little closer, let your shoulders drop, and let your breathing slow down. Tonight we are going to walk through the lands between together, slowly, the way you would if you had nowhere to be and no reason to rush. We are going to talk about the stories hidden inside Elden Ring, not the bosses or the builds, the people, the wanderers, the desperate, the broken, the quietly heroic, the ones who asked you for help, and whose fates you might have missed entirely if you blinked at the wrong moment. So close your eyes if you want to. Let the words carry you wherever you need to go. The lands between can wait. Part 1. Ranni the Witch, Blaidd the Half-Wolf, and the conspiracy that fractured the sky. There is a tower at the edge of the world, rising out of cold mist above a place called the Three Sisters. And in that tower lives a woman made of porcelain and moonlight, who has been carrying a secret since the night the sky cracked open. Her name is Ranni, and she would very much prefer you call her Renna, at least at first. You meet her in the dark. She comes to you at night, in the church of LA, while the grass whispers around the ruins and the stars overhead have that quiet listening quality they only get after midnight. She is small and blue and made of a body that is not truly her own, a doll she constructed, a shell she chose to inhabit. She hands you the spirit calling bell and the lone wolf ashes and tells you very little about herself. Her real name is not what she offers, and then she vanishes into the dark before you have a chance to ask why. But here is the thing about Ranni the Witch. She is the daughter of Radagon and Queen Rennala, which makes her a demigod, an Empyrean, one of those rare souls considered worthy of one day replacing Queen Marika as the vessel of a god. She was, in the language of the lands between, chosen. The Two Fingers themselves selected a guardian for her, a loyal companion to walk beside her through her entire life. His name was Blaidd, and he was half-wolf. Now, being chosen is not, in this world, a comfortable position to be in. It means you belong to something. It means the greater will, that vast and distant cosmic intelligence that threads through the Erdtree and shapes every institution in the lands between, has plans for you. Plans you did not agree to. Plans no one asked you about. And Ranni, from a very young age, decided she wanted no part of them. She wanted to be free. Not free in the small, personal sense, but cosmically free. She wanted a future for the lands between that was not dictated by the greater will, not written in advance by cosmic fingers that have never once asked what humans actually want. She wanted a world operating under a different order entirely, one governed by nothing but the cold, distant light of the moon. To do this, she needed to die, or at least, something needed to die, and what Ranni did on the night of the Black Knives was this. She stole a fragment of the Rune of Death, the very rune that had been sealed away inside Malekith so that the gods could be immortal, and she used it to kill her own body. She let her soul leave the flesh her parents gave her, so that the Two Fingers could no longer claim her, so the greater will's thread connecting her to its designs would simply snap, go slack, drift loose. She abandoned her divine inheritance and her physical form in a single night, and she built herself a doll to live in instead. But the same assassination that freed Ranni also killed Godwyn the Golden, the beloved prince, the most admired of all Marika's children. And the way Godwyn died was wrong. The assassins had the Rune of Death applied to their blades, but the curse split unevenly. Ranni lost her body, but kept her soul. Godwyn lost his soul, but kept his body. And that body, growing, spreading, corrupting from deep within the roots of the Erdtree, became the source of something called those who live in death, a festering tragedy that runs underneath the whole story of the lands between. Ranni carries that guilt with her. She never says so directly. She is precise with her words in a way that suggests she has thought very carefully about what to say and what not to. But it is there, underneath everything. To move forward with what she needs, she begins to gather people. She has a war counselor, the giant blacksmith Iji, gentle and slow-spoken, who has served her since she was small. She has Blaidd, her guardian, her oldest companion, the half-wolf warrior who appears on hilltops in the mist and howls like he is the loneliest sound in the world. And she has you, the tarnished, the nobody who wandered in from the edge of everything and still somehow ended up being exactly who she needed. She also has Seluvis, but we will come back to him. The quest she sends you on is enormous in its scope. She needs you to find a thing called the Fingerslayer Blaidd, a weapon made specifically to kill the two fingers themselves, those pale and ancient entities whose guidance shapes the Golden Order. To find it, you need to help Blaidd, who is looking for information in a place called Siofra River, a vast underground river valley lit by blue lanterns and studded with ruined structures of a civilization that predates everything we know. He stands there in the ghostly underground light, with his wolf ears and his two-handed greatsword, and his manner of speaking that is careful and formal in the way of someone who grew up knowing they were different from everyone around them. Blaidd was made by the two fingers. That is the tragedy hidden inside him. His very existence was a gift to Ranni, a loyal companion shaped and formed for her service. He loves her genuinely, completely, with the uncomplicated devotion of someone who has never questioned who he is or who he belongs to. But the two fingers build in failsafes. Blaidd was designed to report back on Ranni, to be the instrument of her capture if she ever strayed too far from the Greater Will's intentions. He was supposed to betray her, eventually, whether he wanted to or not. He did not want to. He resisted. So completely, so absolutely, that the madness the two fingers had built into him as a failsafe activated instead, and he broke down, and he had to be contained in a place called Forlorn Hound Evergaol, a magical prison where you find him if you happen to walk across the right patch of grass in the right corner of Limgrave at the wrong hour. After you free him, after the whole long chain of events unfolds, after Radahn falls and a meteor carves a path down to Nokron and the Fingerslayer Blaidd is retrieved from the ghostly ruins of that fallen city, after Ranni uses the blade and the Carrion inverted statue and the Dark Moon ring to complete her ritual and vanishes into the cosmos to pursue the Age of Stars, Blaidd is left behind. You find him outside Ranni's rise when it is all over. He is standing in the courtyard, and he attacks you without warning, not because he wants to hurt you, but because whatever the two fingers built into him finally, completely, unmade the part of him that was still himself. Ranni is gone. His purpose is gone, and all that remains is the fracture, the broken failsafe, the grief that has no shape and nowhere to go but outward. When you kill him, and you must, he drops his sword and his armor and something called Blaidd's Set. And there is a note in the item description of the armor that says, simply, that it was made to fit a body like his, half man, half wolf, as if there were ever others like him, which there were not. Blaidd was unique, made once for one person who is now gone, and you are left in the cold moonlit courtyard with his things. Now, Seluvis. Preceptor Seluvis lives in a tower that should be adjacent to Ranni's rise, close enough to have served her and her mother the academy, close enough to be theoretically loyal to her cause. He is arrogant in the specific, tightly wound way of someone who is very intelligent and has spent his whole life making sure everyone knows it. He gives you an introduction letter for Sorceress Selen and speaks to you with the slightly elevated disdain of someone performing a favor they consider beneath them. He is one of those characters where you keep giving him the benefit of the doubt because the performance of reasonable cooperation is so consistent. He has tasks for you. He shares information. He tells you things you need to know in order to progress other quests. Everything he does is technically useful, and he does it all with the practiced ease of someone who has learned that being useful is the best camouflage. But what Seluvis is actually doing, quietly, while you run his errands and think he is your ally, is this. He is turning people into puppets. He has a hidden cellar beneath his tower that you can only access once you are deep into Ranni's quest. And inside that cellar are humanoid spirit ash forms, frozen and inert and stripped of whatever they used to be. One of them is Nefeli Lu, if you make the mistake of giving her his potion. One of them is a person named Dung Eater, if certain conditions are met. One of them may have been Pidia, his own servant, the crestfallen man who sits on the cliffs of Korea Manor and sells you things, who Seluvis likely killed to use as raw material for one of his formulations. The cellar is one of the most disturbing revelations in a game full of disturbing revelations, not because of dramatic presentation, but because of how quiet it is. Just bodies, just the remains of people who were turned into useful objects and shelved. The horror is in the organization of it, the way the space has been prepared, the way the puppet ashes are arranged in orderly rows as though the practice is too routine to require display. Seluvis is building a collection. He considers people to be objects, at best, potential additions to his gallery of the emptied. He is clever enough to disguise this as research, but what it is, really, is the same impulse that runs through almost every villain in this world. The desire to possess, to reduce living things to something controllable and still. The great ones in Bloodborne had this quality. The Healing Church had it. Every institution that has ever looked at a person and seen primarily a resource has it. Seluvis just does it at the individual scale, which in some ways makes it more intimate and more nauseating. He also, and this is the part that lands like a stone in quiet water, tries to get you to give one of his potions to Ranni herself. He has developed an obsession with her that has curdled over time into the specific kind of possessiveness that cannot tolerate someone it loves being free and beyond reach. He watched her grow up. He served her. He has devoted years to being near her and useful to her, and she has never, not once, looked at him the way he looks at her. He wants to make her into a puppet, into something that cannot leave him, cannot look past him, cannot choose a path that does not include him at the center. She would never allow it, of course. If you tell her about the potion, her response is so controlled, it becomes its own kind of fury. She destroys it. She does not say much. She does not need to. Seluvis dies during the course of Ranni's questline, and you can loot his tower and cellar after. His notes are there, his formulations, his careful records of what he extracted from each subject and what remained. He was meticulous. Meticulous people with no ethical anchor are always the most devastating kind of threat because they leave so few loose ends. The spirit ashes you can acquire from him, the puppet ashes of people like Dolores, the Sleeping Arrow puppet, and Nephili. If you made that terrible choice, are powerful combat tools. FromSoftware does not make this easy for you. The useful thing is made of a cost that you have to decide how to carry. When Ranni's quest concludes and you receive the Age of Stars ending, the world enters a long and quiet era without a divine order. The lands between drift outward into the cosmos, following the cold blue light of a new moon, free from the greater will and its plans. It is a melancholy ending, as most endings here are, but it is the one that most resembles a genuine choice, a future shaped by someone who wanted something different enough to die for it, and lived for it instead. And out there in that new age, somewhere in the dark between stars, there is a doll made of porcelain and moonlight, carrying a burden she chose, finally going where she wanted to go. If that stirs something in you, if that story made you want to know what other lives are tucked into the corners of this world, then stay with me. We are only just beginning, and if you are drifting already, that is wonderful too. Let it take you. The stories will still be here. If you are enjoying this journey through the lands between, take a moment to hit subscribe and leave a comment telling me your favorite questline or NPC. It genuinely helps, and I read every single one. Now, let us keep walking. Part 2. Millicent, Gowrie, and the Daughters of a Goddess in the far east of the lands between, past the golden rolling hills where the horses run and the grace lights the roads like copper lanterns, there is a region called Caelid, and Caelid is dying. The sky above Caelid is the color of an infected wound, a sickly crimson that sits heavy and close, like a fever you cannot sweat out. The ground is red clay and ash. The trees are warped into shapes that suggest pain. The creatures that roam there have been hollowed out by something, made more animal, more desperate, more purely aggressive than anything in the world to the west. Caelid was not always like this. It was made like this in a single moment, by a single woman, in a battle that ended in a stalemate that was somehow worse than either side losing outright. That woman was Millennia, Blaidd of Mequea, goddess of rot. And somewhere in the festering swamp at Caelid's heart, in a place called the Church of the Plague, a young woman with red hair and one arm is slowly dying of something she was born with. Her name is Millicent. You find her leaning against the stone wall of the church, which is half ruin, half haven, situated at the top of a poison-laced hill in the worst part of a terrible place. Her right arm is gone at the shoulder. The scarlet rot has taken it, is still moving through her, has been since she first came into the world. She tells you to go away. She is not rude about it, not exactly, but she is very clear that your presence changes nothing, that whatever you think you can offer has been offered before by others who meant well and could not follow through. She expects nothing from anyone. The man who sent you to her is named Gowry, and he lives in a shack at the edge of Celia, town of sorcery, which is itself a ghost town of empty towers and invisible barriers where the locals have been frozen in a curse so long they barely remember being human. Gowry is old and stooped and speaks with the particular warmth of someone who is working very hard to appear benevolent. And in the way these things go in FromSoftware games, that warmth should make you nervous. He tells you he wants to save Millicent. He tells you she has potential, that she is more than she knows, that she deserves better than the slow dissolution the rot offers. He asks you to find something called an unalloyed gold needle, an artifact designed to resist the influence of outer gods, which is what the scarlet rot ultimately is. The outer god of rot, sealed deep in a lake beneath the earth, bleeding its corruption upward through everything it touches. You kill Commander O'Neill in the depths of the Aeonia swamp to get the needle. The swamp is the ground zero of Millennia's blossoming, the place where she detonated herself into a giant scarlet flower and flooded the region with rot spores to end her stalemate with Redon. You bring the needle to Gowry, who repairs it, and you bring it to Millicent. She takes it. She stabs it into herself with the calm of someone who has made peace with worse odds. And the rot quiets, slows, becomes manageable. She stands up straighter. She starts to remember what she was before the sickness had its way with her, and then she begins to move. What follows Millicent across the lands between is both a journey and a slow revelation. You find her first at Gowry's shack, drawn there by something she cannot name, some pull in the direction of goodbye. She does not know why she came. She does not know why the place feels significant. Her memory has been eaten at by the rot, and Gowry, when she finally sees him again, is a stranger to her. She leaves. She heads toward the Altus Plateau, then toward the mountaintops of the Giants, retracing a path as if something buried in her body remembers a road her mind has forgotten. At each stop she goes a little further, gets a little stronger, begins to speak with more certainty about who she is and where she is going. She believes she is of Millennia's blood. She does not know exactly how, whether she is a daughter, a sister, an offshoot born from the spores of the Scarlet Aeonia that Millennia became. She does not know, but she knows the connection is real, and she has decided to follow it to the end. Her destination is Miquella's Erdtree, that impossible, heartbreaking structure, that golden tree grown from Miquella's own hair and arm in an attempt to create a place of sanctuary for those the Golden Order rejected, the cursed and the afflicted and the strange. It was never finished. Miquella was taken before he could complete it. Abducted by Mog, Lord of Blood, and the Erdtree grew on without him, incomplete, wild, its upper branches tended by the spectral remains of Millennia's knights and its lower depths rotting into ruin. Millicent goes there anyway. At the deepest accessible part of the Erdtree, in a chamber called the Prayer Room, Millicent tells you she knows now. She is of Millennia's blood. She says it with the particular stillness of someone who has just accepted a truth they have been circling for a long time. She is not sure whether to call Millennia her mother or her god, or something else entirely, but the relationship is real and it is hers. Then comes the choice. After you defeat the ulcerated tree spirit in a pool of scarlet rot nearby, 2 summoning signs appear on the ground. A gold one. A red one. The gold sign calls you into Millicent's world to fight alongside her against 4 women who are trying to kill her. The red sign calls you to fight alongside those 4 women against Millicent herself. Those 4 women are her sisters, Mary, Maureen, Amy, and Pollyanna, born from the same Scarlet Aeonia bloom, sent by Gowry to kill Millicent so that she might, in dying, bloom into something greater. A Scarlet Valkyrie, a further extension of Millennia's divinity. Gowry always wanted this. His warmth, his care, his repairs of the unalloyed gold needle, all of it was pointed at this moment. He raised these women. He called them his daughters. He sent them to kill the one he claimed to want to save. If you choose the gold sign and fight beside her, you win. You drive the sisters off. And then you find Millicent lying beside a scarlet pool, and she tells you she took the needle out of her body, which means the rot is moving again, which means she is dying. She chose this. She did not want to become something other than herself. She says it very clearly. She would rather die as who she is than live as who Gowry wanted her to become. She says she found her will. She says she is grateful. She closes her eyes. She becomes a small flower. If you return to Millennia's arena after all of this and defeat the goddess of rot, you receive Miquella's needle from the scarlet Aeonia that blooms from Millennia's body. It was Millicent's gift, preserved in the moment of her own mother's defeat. An item that reverses the most catastrophic corruption the frenzied flame can inflict. Millicent, in dying as herself, gave you a tool that could save everything. Gowry, when the questline ends, drops the flock's canvas talisman. He has nothing else to say. Whatever performance of fatherly grief he might offer is one you do not need to hear. The story of Millicent is one of the most complete emotional arcs in a game full of incomplete ones. She comes to you unable to trust, barely surviving, with one arm and a disease eating the other. She leaves it on her own terms, having chosen her end herself, having loved someone large and terrible and distant enough to be called a goddess, and having decided that her own small life, imperfect and brief and hers alone, was worth more than any divine apotheosis someone else had mapped out for her. She was right. She was always right. Part 3. Fia, Dee the twins, and the children who live in death. The Round Table, Hold, is a strange place. It exists outside of the normal flow of the lands between, a refuge held together by lost grace, a gathering point for the tarnished who have been summoned back to life with purpose, but no clear instructions about what that purpose is. There is a fire in the main hall. There are people standing around it in various states of confusion and grief and determination. And in a small bedroom off the main corridor, there is a woman with dark hair and pale skin who will hold you in her arms if you ask her to. Her name is Fia. She calls herself a deathbed companion. She says the embrace will give you warmth and that she is glad you are here. She says this with the specific gentleness of someone who has decided to make themselves soft in a world that keeps cutting at softness. She is easy to like. She is also deceiving everyone in my building, quietly, patient as water finding its level. What Fia is doing is this. She is waiting for the right moment to do something that will shatter the Hold's uneasy peace and set in motion the end of a very long, very terrible chapter of grief. But first, D.D. Hunter of the Dead is one of the first voices you hear in Limgrave if you wander east of the starting grace. He is standing at the edge of a ruined village called Summonwater, where a Tibia mariner has set up residence amid the undead, and he warns you away from it with the clipped authority of someone who has been cleaning up these situations for a long time. He introduces himself as D. He tells you he hunts those who live in death. He tells you they should be left well alone. His real name is Darian, but nobody calls him that. He has a twin brother named Devon, though he does not speak of him, and the two brothers share something unusual in this world. They were born sharing a single soul between two bodies. This made them reviled, considered cursed, considered wrong. The only institution that would accept them was the Golden Order, that rigid hierarchy built around the Erdtree and its laws about what kinds of souls are permitted to exist. The Golden Order accepted them because it needed warriors who were zealous enough to hunt the undead without flinching. D became exactly that. His crusade against those who live in death is not cruelty for its own sake. It is the conviction of someone who was welcomed by one institution and has folded that welcome into his identity so completely that he cannot see the edges of it anymore. He ends up at Round Table Hold eventually, sitting at the table, selling incantations, speaking with formal correctness about his duty to the Order. And there is Fia, in her bedroom, watching him and waiting. The weathered dagger she eventually hands you, asking you to find its rightful owner, belongs to D. When you give it back to him, something in the balance shifts. If you reload the area after, you find D is dead. Fia is standing over his body in the locked room that was previously inaccessible. She does not seem sorry. She tells you that she did what needed to be done, then she disappears. She goes down into the earth, to the deep root depths, which is one of the stranger and more affecting places in the game. A vast underground space where the roots of the Erdtree descend into darkness, where they have grown around and through something that should not be there, the malformed, still-living corpse of Godwyn the Golden, who lost his soul on the night of the Black Knives, but kept his body, which has never stopped existing, which has slowly been spreading its corrupted death in life through the roots that touch it, seeding the world above with creatures called those who live in death. Fia is in love with Godwyn, not the monstrous shape his body has become, the man he was, the prince, the golden warrior who was beloved by everyone and asked for nothing in return. She came to the Round Table hold to find the pieces she needed to get close to him, to be his companion in the way her tradition demanded, to lie beside the dead and provide them comfort and passage. She is a deathbed companion. This is her purpose and her calling, and she does it without apology. She also wants to bear his child, a child of the Prince of Death, a new being that would be a bridge between life and death, a sovereign for those who live in death, who have been hunted and despised and told their existence is a defilement of order. She wants them to have someone. She wants them to have a future. To get there, she needed the curse mark of death, the other half of what was taken from Godwyn on the night he was killed. Half the curse mark was on Godwyn's body, working its way through the roots. The other half had passed to Ranni at the moment she separated soul from flesh, because the curse split between them. Ranni carries it as a scar of the night she murdered herself. Getting it requires inverting the Carrion study hall, which requires a statue that Ranni gives you in exchange for the Fingerslayer blade, which requires all of Ranni's questline up to that point. The two questlines are knotted together like roots. When you bring Fia the curse mark of death in the deep root depths, she holds you one more time, the last time, and tells you she is satisfied. She tells you she is choosing this. Then she falls asleep, and you can enter her dream and fight the dragon called Lich Dragon Fortisax, the ancient ally of Godwyn, who has been trying to save his friend from what he became, who has been tangled in the roots with him for so long he has become part of the nightmare. When you come back from that dream and Fia is dead, the mending rune of the Death Prince is on her body. This rune makes possible the Age of Duskborn ending, in which those who live in death are included in the natural order, given the right to exist without persecution, given a place in whatever comes next. And shortly after, standing over Fia's body, is Dee's brother, Devon. He avenged Darien. He found her in the depths and he killed her, as twins who share a soul will always eventually move in parallel directions toward the same conclusion. He gives you the twinned set, the armor that was theirs together, and the inseparable sword, a great sword and a short sword bound as one, because they were two bodies and one soul, and even their weapon could not be made to choose one shape. They are both gone now. Dee and Fia and Devon and Godwyn, all of them resolved in their own directions, all of them part of a story about what it means to die wrong, to live on past your appointed ending, and to be refused the rest you were promised. The lands between is full of people who cannot properly die. Fia spent her whole life keeping them company until they could. Part 4. Alexander, Iron Fist of the Jar, and the warrior who just wanted to be great. The first time you find Alexander, the Iron Fist, he is stuck in a hole, not metaphorically, literally. He has fallen into a pit of soft earth near the road in Stormhill and cannot get himself out because his arms are too short for his giant clay body to get purchase on the ground. And he is there bellowing with the particular vocal energy of someone who has already worked through the humiliation and arrived at cheerful pragmatism on the other side. He says hello. He tells you he is on his way to a festival of combat in a place called Redmane Castle, far away in Caelid. He asks if you might give him a smack or two to pop him out of the ground. You hit him with your largest weapon, and he pops free and thanks you with the uncomplicated gratitude of someone who expected the world to come through for him. And it did. Alexander is a warrior jar. He is a giant living clay pot with arms and legs and a face, which is a thing that exists in this world, because someone, a long time ago, decided that the right way to honor the dead was to place their remains inside a jar and carry that jar as a memorial. The jars absorbed the essence of the people inside them. They became sentient. They became warriors, carrying the strength and spirit of everyone who had ever been placed within them. Alexander is not just one person. He is many. He is a whole accumulation of warriors layered inside him. Every battle he survives adding more fallen fighters to his collection, strengthening him, deepening him. His dream is to keep fighting until he is full of the greatest warriors who have ever lived. Not for glory, exactly, not for recognition. He just genuinely, completely, without any complicated motivation behind it, wants to become the best possible vessel for fallen greatness. He wants to be worthy of everyone inside him. He is, without much competition, the most purely sincere character in the game. You find him again in Gale Tunnel, at the border between Limgrave and Caelid, calmly waiting for the road to Redmane to open up. You find him at Redmane Castle during the festival itself, standing in the plaza with Patches and Blaidd and a collection of fighters waiting for the chance to battle Star Scourge Radon. He is delighted to see you each time. He remembers you. He calls you by name, or by something close to a name, a warmth of recognition that feels more genuine than most of the interactions you will have in this world. After Radon falls, you find Alexander on the battlefield, hunched over the bodies of the fallen, scooping them into himself. He is efficient about it, unsentimental, the way a gardener is unsentimental about compost. He thanks Radon quietly for the gift of so many worthy souls, and if that strikes you as strange, you should know that Alexander speaks of Radon with a kind of reverence. He is already composing the honor he will eventually offer. He gets stuck again, of course. South of the Carian Study Hall in Liurnia, wedged into the earth once more, this time requiring an oil pot to loosen the clay enough to extract him. He bakes himself inside a volcano on Mount Gelmir to harden his exterior. He appears at the Radon battlefield in crumbling Farum Azula, and there is something quietly significant about seeing him there, at the end of everything, preparing for the last thing he will do. He challenges you to a duel in a corner of Farum Azula, and he is completely honest about why. He believes he is almost full. He has almost achieved what he came to achieve. And now he wants to see if a tarnished with the grace of Marika's design is the last piece he needs, the final warrior worthy of being carried inside him into whatever comes after. He says this with the same cheerful directness he applies to everything. There is no manipulation in it, no cruelty, just a question. When you kill him, he cracks open, and from inside him, pressing through the broken clay, is a spirit ash called Alexander's Innards, a fragment of the consciousness he built over his long journey, something you can carry with you as a companion. He offers you his final gratitude. He says this is the best possible ending for a Jar warrior. He says it without sadness. The spirit ash he becomes is called Warrior Jar Shard, and it pulses with something that feels, if you are paying attention, like satisfaction. Alexander's story is the straightest line in Elden Ring, the most unambiguous trajectory from beginning to end. He wanted one thing. He went toward it. He was cheerful about the obstacles. He never doubted himself or betrayed anyone or allowed the weight of the world to change what he was trying to do. In a game made almost entirely of tragedy and compromise and moral fracture, Alexander is a small, bright, absurd, genuinely moving anomaly. He wanted to be full of greatness. He was full of greatness. He ended when he was supposed to end, how he wanted to end, full to the brim. Not many characters in the lands between can say that. Part 5. Patches, the liar you always forgive. Patches has been in more FromSoftware games than almost anyone else. He appears in the Dark Souls games, and Bloodborne, and Armored Core, and here, in the lands between, doing exactly what he always does. Finding a new cave, setting a new trap, nearly killing you with it, and then spending the rest of the game being slightly more charming than he has any right to be. You first find him in Murkwater Cave, a small hollow in the Agheel Lake River system in western Limgrave. The cave is dim and scattered with abandoned supplies, and there is a chest at the back that seems too obvious to be safe. It is not safe. The moment you touch it, the cave seals, a man drops from the ceiling, and Patches begins trying to kill you with the theatrical aggression of someone who has done this many times and has a whole routine about it. But when you get him down to half his health, he stops. He holds up his hands. He says he made a terrible mistake. He says he thought you were someone else. He says he is a humble traveling merchant, and clearly there has been a misunderstanding, and he asks very politely if you would consider not killing him. You can kill him. He drops a golden seed and some serviceable weapons, and that is that. Or you can let him live, and Patches becomes the most reliably treacherous ally in the game. He sets himself up as a merchant at Scenic Isle in Liurnia, and his goods are genuinely useful. He sells ropes and kukri and a few specialty items that are hard to find elsewhere. He speaks to you with a warmth that is indistinguishable from real warmth, and the part of you that wants to believe in it will believe in it, right up until the moment he kicks you into a pit in Volcano Manor, or sends you somewhere dangerous with cheerful misdirection and collects what you leave behind. There is a version of Patches that is just a scoundrel, a greedy, self-interested man who found early in life that people could be relied upon to want things badly enough to ignore warning signs, and has been exploiting that ever since. He is not cruel for cruelty's sake. He does not enjoy violence the way the dung-eater enjoys violence. He simply has a moral structure that places his own survival and comfort at the very top of every priority list, and does not have strong opinions about anything below that. But there is another version, the one that shows up in the later parts of his questline, after enough interactions that the performance starts to slip a little. He speaks of Rhea, the young woman who is actually a snake-like creature named Zarias, daughter of Rykard, who he genuinely seems to pity. He gives you a letter from her after she transforms, a letter full of sorrow and resignation, and he tells you he is sorry he could not do more. He says it with something underneath the usual ease that sounds uncomfortably like sincerity. And at the Radon Festival, you find him sitting in the plaza of Redmane Castle among the assembled fighters, watching the preparations with the detached appraisal of someone who came to see what there was to gain, and is not entirely sure the gain will outweigh the cost. He does not fight Radon. Of course he does not. But he is there. His ultimate fate, if you complete his arc and allow it to play out, is to become a kind of permanent presence in the world. Not a hero, not a villain, just Patches, selling things, occasionally betraying someone, occasionally feeling something close to guilt about it, always surviving. The Lands Between is full of people with grand purposes and grand endings. Patches has a modest purpose and no ending in particular. He will simply keep going. There is something almost enviable about that, if you squint at it the right way. He is, as his various item descriptions note, a thief and a liar. He says so himself, cheerfully, without apparent shame. But he is also, in his limited and self-serving way, consistent. You always know roughly what Patches will do. He will try to take something from you, he will apologize when caught, and he will be genuinely grateful for the opportunity to try again. He is the most honest, dishonest man in the game. He also has a bit in Liurnia where he will throw you off a cliff using rainbow stones as bait, and the fact that this is charming rather than infuriating is a testament to the writing. Part 6. Bach the Seamster and the Question of Worth. Bach is a bush. More accurately, Bach is a demi-human, one of the small, quick, feral creatures that swarm over cliffs and ruins in the early game, wild and aggressive, and not, generally, someone you stop to have a conversation with. But Bach, specifically, has been cursed by one of his own kind into the shape of a small tree along the road east of the Aguil Lake North Grace. And if you walk past him close enough, you will hear a small, frightened voice coming from the shrubbery asking for help. Hit the bush. This is important. You have to physically hit the bush to break the curse, and Bach will pop free in his true form, a small brown creature with large eyes and the particular exhausted relief of someone who has been a bush for longer than anyone should be a bush. He thanks you effusively. He gives you some crafting materials. He tells you he is a seamster, a tailor, that he has a gift for alteration work that most of his kind do not share, and that his people drove him out for it. He says this last part very quietly, the way people say the things they have said many times before to themselves, alone, until the saying of it has worn a groove that does not hurt as much as it used to. He moves around the map as you progress, setting up at different sites of grace, and at each location he offers to alter your armor for free. He trims capes, shortens sleeves, makes the subtle adjustments that allow a piece of gear to breathe, to move, to feel like yours rather than something borrowed from someone larger and more armored than you. He is good at this. He is genuinely skilled, and he knows it. And watching him work at it has the particular pleasure of seeing someone inhabit their competence. But Bach is not happy. This is the thing about his quest that sneaks up on you. The work is not enough. The craftsmanship is not enough. He wants to be beautiful. He wants to look the way he imagines the tarnished looks, the way the golden nobles of the Lands Between look, the way the statues of the Erdtree's faith look. He is plagued by the gap between what he is and what he wants to be. And he has decided the solution is to change what he is rather than to examine the standards he is measuring himself against. He speaks of a thing called a larval tear. If consumed in the right place, a larval tear allows you to respec, to fundamentally remold your form and your attributes. Bach has learned that a demi-human who consumes a larval tear might be reborn as something else, something golden, something accepted by a world that currently sees his face and decides, before he has even opened his mouth, what value he has. The questline has two endings. If you give him the larval tear and say nothing else, he consumes it and is reborn as a golden-haired human boy. He sits, dazed, in his new body and tells you he feels beautiful. He thanks you. Then the quest ends, and you never see him again. Which the game does not say explicitly, but which item descriptions quietly confirm, is because the rebirth cost him the life that sustained him. He dies soon after. He got what he wanted, and it killed him. But there is another option. There is an item called the Prattling Pate, You're Beautiful. It is a small ceramic knuckle duster thing that, when used, speaks the phrase in a strange, gentle voice. If you find it in the hermit village on Mount Gelmir and use it while standing in front of Bach after he begins talking about wanting to be reborn, he hears it and he stops. He looks at you. He says no one has ever said that to him. He says he wants to believe it. He says maybe he does not need to change after all. Maybe the work he does and the skill he has is enough. Maybe he is enough. He stays alive. He stays himself. He goes on altering armor at sites of grace across the lands between. A small brown demi-human who was a bush once and almost became someone else and chose, in the end, to remain Bach. It is a very small story. It takes up maybe 4 or 5 real interactions across the whole game, but it is about something real and large. The difference between accepting yourself and being accepted, and the violence that lives inside the belief that those two things are the same. Bach needed someone to say he was beautiful while he still looked like Bach. He needed the affirmation to arrive before the transformation, not after. And if you give it to him in time, he takes it into himself like water and keeps going. Take that gently into your own quiet evening, if you want to. There is no rush here. We are just walking, just telling stories. Part 7. Hidetaka, the Three Fingers, and the Light That Blinds. There is a young woman in Liurnia of the Lakes who is searching for a light she cannot see. Her name is Hidetaka. She was born nearly blind, her sight a dim and unreliable thing she has spent her whole life learning to navigate around. She stands at the edge of the lake-facing cliffs in the early Liurnia region, tilting her head slightly as if listening for something, and she asks, very politely, if you have any shabriri grapes. She says that when she eats one, she can feel a distant light in the back of her eyes. She says it is the only thing that helps her find her way. Shabriri grapes are the eyes of people who have fallen to the frenzied flame. This is not information Hidetaka has. She thinks they are ordinary grapes, rough-skinned and a little bitter, with a strange warmth to them that lets her feel direction when she eats them. You can tell her what they actually are. She vomits. She sits with it for a moment, and then she says that even so, even knowing, they still help her find the light. She is going to keep eating them. This is the story of how a gentle, humble, nearly blind young woman walks herself, step by step, into the furthest and most catastrophic spiritual position available in Elden Ring. She is a guide for the Three Fingers, though she does not know this for a long time, maybe ever. She is drawn toward the frenzied flame by the same combination of longing and susceptibility that makes the frenzied flame so dangerous. She wants to see. She wants to be led. She has spent her whole life finding her direction through small, strange gifts from people who stop to help, and she has learned to trust the feeling of warmth when it comes to her in the dark. You follow her across Liurnia, giving her grapes at each stopping point, near the Gatetown Bridge, near the Bellum Church, near the Frenzied Flame Village. Each time she thanks you, eats, steadies herself, and moves forward. Her face gets slightly less mobile as you go. Her smiles become a little more fixed. The warmth she radiates starts to feel slightly removed from her, like light coming through dirty glass. She ends up beneath Lanedale, in the deepest basement the city has, in a place called the Frenzied Flame Prescription. Here, behind a door that requires you to strip off all your equipment and walk through alone, completely naked and defenseless, the Three Fingers wait. 3 enormous divine appendages of some cosmic entity, some outer god, something that is the opposite of the ordered precision of the greater will. The 3 fingers represent the original undivided flame, the chaos before order, the annihilation that exists prior to creation. They wrap themselves around you when you approach and sear the flame of frenzy into your flesh. And from that point forward, one of the 6 possible endings of the game is open to you, and the other 5 are locked, unless you take specific and costly steps to remove the branding. When you return to Hidetaka after inheriting the flame, she is waiting. She has changed. She calls herself a finger maiden now, a servant of the 3 fingers, their equivalent of the maidens who guide the tarnished toward the 2 fingers. She thanks you. She tells you the light she was looking for finally came to her. Her quest ends, and the items she leaves behind are the Frenzied Flame Seal and 5 Frenzy Flame Stones, tools for building toward the Lord of Frenzied Flame ending. Hidetaka's face, when she says the light came to her, is the face of someone who is no longer fully present. Whether the Frenzied Flame is speaking through her, whether Shabriri, the demon whose eyes you were feeding her, has replaced whatever Hidetaka used to be, whether this is salvation or possession, the game does not say. It never says. But consider what the 3 fingers ending actually entails. You become the Lord of Frenzied Flame and set the world on fire, not metaphorically. The entire lands between burns. Melina, who sacrificed herself to take you to the Forge of Giants, who burned for you so that you could reach the end, appears one final time in the post-credits. Her eye, usually closed, is open, and it burns golden with the power of destined death. She tells you she will find you. She tells you she will deliver you your destined death. Hidetaka followed her light into the most destructive force in the game's cosmology, and she looked happy when she found it. There is something there worth sitting with. About the difference between genuine illumination and the kind of brightness that simply overwhelms rather than clarifies. About following warmth when you cannot see. About what it costs to want so badly to find your direction that you trust the first thing that offers to show you the way. Hidetaka wanted to see. She found something that made her feel as though she could. Whether what she found was actually the light she was looking for, or whether it was the thing that lives at the far end of the longing itself, is the question the game leaves open in the dark with her. Part 8. The Dung Eater, Seedbed Curses, and the Blessing of Despair. We should talk about the Dung Eater. Not because his story is pleasant, because it absolutely is not, but because his story is one of the most philosophically strange in a game that is thick with philosophical strangeness. He appears first as a spirit in Round Table Hold, a red hue to the specter that tells you something is fundamentally different about this presence. He is in a sealed room, and through the door he tells you his name, and then tells you he has defiled many, and that he will defile you too. And his voice has the particular flat calm of someone who is not performing anything, who has arrived somewhere past the place where performance is necessary, who simply is what he is without any remaining membrane of social courtesy around it. He is locked in a cell in the subterranean shunning grounds, the sewer labyrinth under Lanedell. Finding him requires navigating one of the most deliberately unpleasant environments in the game, a dripping underground of rats and pipes and rot that is the literal underside of the grandest city in the lands between. He is at the bottom of it, in a cage, turning his head toward the stone wall, with the rhythmic focus of someone who has found a way to pass the time. When you open the cell door and tell him to leave, he does. He does not thank you. He is not grateful. He just says that he has things to do, and he will begin doing them. What the Dung Eater does, specifically, is find corpses and defile them in a way that prevents their souls from returning to the Erdtree. He calls what he leaves behind seedbed curses, and there are 5 of them scattered across the most significant locations in the game. He is marking them. He is seeding a curse. He wants to spread something he calls the blessing of despair across the entirety of the lands between. This sounds purely monstrous. He is designed to sound purely monstrous. His name is the Dung Eater. He is the most deliberately alienating character the game offers you, a test of how much you can hold in tension the fact that following his quest at all requires engaging with something that is genuinely evil. There is no sympathetic backstory. There is no moment where you understand that he was hurt, and this is how the hurt came out. The Dung Eater simply hates the Golden Order and everyone who benefits from it, and he has decided to enact that hatred as comprehensively as possible. But here is what the Blessing of Despair actually does. The Golden Order determines who is accepted by the Erdtree, who receives grace, whose soul returns to the roots when they die, and is welcomed back into the cycle. The people it excludes, the omens who are born with horns and are treated as cursed, the misbegotten who are something between human and beast, The various beings the Order has classified as wrong are refused. They cannot return. They are cast out of even the basic spiritual comfort the Erdtree offers. The blessing of despair would curse everyone, drag everyone outside the Order's taxonomy, make everyone equally defiled, equally excluded, equally wrong. This is the Dung Eater's argument, that if the Order's categorization is the source of the suffering, and if you cannot change the Order from the inside, then the only remaining act of justice is to make the categorization meaningless. If everyone is cursed, no one is cursed in the way that matters. The hierarchy collapses because its foundation, the purity it claims to protect, no longer exists. It is a genuinely coherent philosophical position, wrapped inside the most unsettling quest delivery system in the game. The blessing of despair ending is almost never chosen. Almost no one builds toward it willingly. But the logic underneath it, the fury at systems of categorization that decide which lives have value, is recognizable. It is the logic of someone who has watched exclusion operate for a very long time, and decided that if inclusion is impossible, then the only equitable option is universal exile. Whether he is right is something the game does not answer. His ending leaves the lands between covered in a curse. The credits roll. You can look at it as destruction or as a kind of leveling, depending on what you bring to it. The Dung Eater does not care which way you look at it. He never needed you to understand him. He needed you to give him the seedbed curses and stay out of his way. Part 9. Kenneth Haight, Nephili Lu, and the small rebuilding of something lost. Not every story in Elden Ring ends in annihilation or cosmic horror or grief. Some of them are smaller, and the smallness is the point. Kenneth Haight is a nobleman of Limgrave. You find him stranded on top of a ruined archway near Mistwood, shouting for assistance with the extraordinary confidence of someone who believes, with full conviction, that the world will eventually come to him if he projects authority clearly enough. He needs Fort Haight retaken. It is his family's fort, and it has been overrun by Godric's soldiers, and he would reclaim it himself. But his current location is the problem, being that he is on top of a crumbling arch above a mob of demi-humans with nowhere comfortable to go. He is pompous. He uses the word retake, where others might say, take back. He refers to himself in terms that imply a lineage and a standing that the current state of the world has temporarily inconvenienced but not fundamentally altered. He is, in the language of a certain kind of English comedic tradition, a figure of gentle ridicule, the sort of man who has never quite noticed that the world he is calibrated for has ended. But here is the thing about Kenneth Haight. He is not wrong. He believes Limgrave deserves a ruler who cares about it. He believes that after Godric's monstrous reign, the land and the people on it deserve something better than the power vacuum that follows. He is not thinking cosmically. He is not concerned with the Elden Ring or the greater will or the fate of the world's spiritual architecture. He wants someone decent in Stormvale Castle, someone who will deal with the soldiers and the outlaws and the practical misery of life in a land that has been ruled by a grafting tyrant. He nominates Nephili Lu. Nephili is the foster daughter of Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing, the most ruthlessly intellectual of the Round Table Tarnished. She is a warrior of remarkable ability, the kind of fighter who moves like the decision to fight has already been made before the situation even begins to develop. And she has her father's mind under her brother's physicality. You meet her in Stormvale Castle just before the Godric fight, and she will help you, this perfect stranger, with the uncomplicated willingness of someone who has decided that helping is what she does. But Nephili is unhappy. Not obviously, not in a way that announces itself. But she has spent her whole life being the foster child of one of the most ambitious people in the lands between, a man who studies and categorizes and assigns value with the cool precision of a natural philosopher, and she has never been entirely sure what value he assigns to her. She does what she is good at. She fights. She helps people. She tries not to want anything she cannot earn with a weapon in her hand. The crisis in her quest comes when Seluvis tries to use her. He has a potion he wants you to give her, a mixture that will, if consumed, reduce her to one of his puppet spirit ashes. If you give it to her, she glazes over. The independent, capable, self-possessed woman in front of you becomes empty. If you resist, if you tell Seluvis to find someone else, or if you give the potion to Gideon who destroys it, Nephili remains herself. After you bring her the spirit ashes of the Stormhawk King, an eagle that served as the symbol of her foster family's legacy. And after Morgott falls in Lanedale and the political order reshuffles, you find her in the throne room of Stormvale Castle, with Kenneth Haight. Gatekeeper Gostock is there too, that sly, snickering man who spent the whole castle opening doors for you while collecting the runes from your corpses. He is selling ancient dragon smithing stones now, efficiently monetizing his proximity to the new regime. Nefeli is the new lord of Limgrave. Kenneth announces this with the satisfaction of a man who has finally, after a great deal of inconvenience, gotten the thing he spent the whole game wanting. Nefeli accepts it without fanfare, the way she accepts everything. She says if you become Elden Lord, she will lighten the burden. It is such a small thing. In a game of world-shattering choices and cosmic endings, someone good got a castle. The people of Limgrave have a ruler who will not graft their body parts to herself. Kenneth got to knight someone, finally, which was apparently all he ever really wanted. Gostock got a sales pitch. The Stormhawk King Ashes, which you retrieve from the Chapel of Anticipation, the very first location you begin the game, connects something from Nefeli's earliest life to this moment at the end. She has come all the way around. She went out into the world, got lost in it, almost disappeared into it, and came back with something to give to someone who needed it. That is not nothing. In the economy of endings this game offers, a woman with a good sword getting a castle and a chance to make something better is not a small thing at all. Part 10. Volcano Manor, Tanith, Raya, and the Serpent God's Dinner Party. There is a manor on a volcano, which should already tell you something. Good things do not happen in places built on unstable geological violence. The people who build there are either unable to leave or unwilling to. Volcano Manor belongs to Tanith. You meet her first, likely, through Raya, the young woman who works as her scout, and can be found near a telescope in Liurnia of the Lakes, distressed because a man named Blackguard Big Boggart has stolen her family heirloom necklace. The necklace retrieval is simple enough. Boggart sells it to you willingly if you buy some prawns first, and the social lubrication of commerce makes the theft a non-issue. Raya is grateful. She offers to take you to the manor. She teleports you to a place that is both beautiful and wrong in the specific way that things maintained through sheer will can be beautiful and wrong. The manor is grand, in the way that places built a long time ago by people with money and taste are grand, and Tanith runs it with the manner of a woman who was born to host, who finds genuine pleasure in the rituals of reception and hospitality, who is serving you tea, and speaking of her master with the devotion of someone who has organized her entire identity around one beloved figure. Her master is Ricard, Lord of Blasphemy, one of the demigod offspring of Radagon and Renala. And what Ricard has done is allow himself to be consumed by a god-devouring serpent, so that his consciousness could merge with something ancient and enormous and capable of swallowing divine beings whole. He became a snake god. He fused with it entirely. He now exists in the crater of the volcano as a massive serpentine nightmare who is, by any conventional measure, not a person anymore. Tanith knows this. She loves him anyway. This is important. She is not deluded. She is not operating under false information. She knows what Ricard has become, and she chooses him continuously, the way a person who has made a commitment decides every day to keep it. The rest of the manor is just framework for that devotion. The manor's purpose is assassination. Tanith and her collection of tarnished recruits, who include the ruthlessly polite Bernal and the various other fighters you may encounter there, are engaged in killing specific targets aligned with the Erdtree. Not because they oppose the Erdtree abstractly, but because Ricard opposes it. Because Ricard's project was always to consume the gods from inside, to build something that could devour divine power and grow fat on it, and eventually overturn the whole Golden Order. You can join them. The manor has contracts, specific names to hunt, and the hunts take you to various corners of the world to eliminate people who serve the Two Fingers or the Golden Order. The work is morally uncomplicated in its mechanics, if not in its implications. You kill people the manor wants dead, and receive weapons in exchange. Then there is Raya. Raya is not just Tanith's scout. Raya is Tanith's child, or something close to it, born from Tanith and Ricard's union into a body that is the manor's curse made flesh. When the questline progresses far enough, you find Rhea in a back room, and she does not look the way she did at the telescope in Liurnia. She has changed. Her true form is a large snake, a zoomorphic creature with a human consciousness and a deep and private suffering about the gap between what she is and what she appears to be. She has been taking a potion that lets her look human, because looking human is necessary for the life she wants to live. The life of someone who can walk into a room without the room going silent for all the wrong reasons. She asks you for something. She asks you to tell her the truth about what she is, or to give her a potion that will let her forget, or to find her something she cannot find for herself. The exact nature of what she needs shifts across the dialogue, but the core of it is consistent. She is in pain about her nature, and she does not know what to do with that pain. Patches can help, strangely enough. If you have followed his questline to the point where he is in the manor, he has something for her. A celestial dew, a gift, offered with something that functions like kindness, even if Patches is Patches. It is one of the most unexpected moments in his arc that the game's most reliable liar is the one who gives Raya genuine care at the moment she most needs it. When you kill Rykard, Tanith disappears. When you return to the site where he fell, you find her there, kneeling over the remains of the serpent god that her master became, and she is eating them. This is not metaphorical. She is eating the literal remains of the monster that Rykard was, with the specific focus of someone performing a devotion that has no witnesses and no audience. She barely acknowledges you. She has somewhere to be, which is here, with what remains of him, for as long as there is anything left. This is the most disturbing and somehow the most tender moment in a game that contains multitudes of both. The manor comes to nothing in the end. Rykard's great project of swallowing gods died with him. Tanith's guests scatter. Bernal goes to Farum Azula, where you may fight him in the late game as an invader who has lost the last mooring he had to any particular cause. Raya's fate is ambiguous. The volcano keeps burning. But Tanith is there with what she loves. Some people would call that a tragedy. Some people would call it loyalty. The distinction between the two is often just a matter of whether the ending was the one you chose or the one that happened to you. Part 11, The Land of Shadow, Ansbach, Leda, and Miquella's Unraveling. There is a whole other world in Elden Ring's expansion, the shadow of the Erdtree, and to reach it, you have to go through the cocoon that Mog, Lord of Blood, built for Miquella. Miquella is one of the two Empyreans born to Radagon and Marika, twin children cursed from birth, Millennia with scarlet rot, and Miquella with eternal youth. He was the most loved of all the demigod children, the most genuinely good, the one who built the Hidetaka as a haven, who created the unalloyed gold needles to help people resist outer gods, who was, by every account, trying to fix things. He was also abducted while still in his golden cocoon by Mog, who wanted him as a consort, who believed Miquella's grace could elevate the dynasty of blood to divine status. What Miquella did, trapped inside the cocoon and unable to fight physically, was this. He shed everything. He shed his body, leaving it behind, growing his true self out of the husk. He shed his grace. He shed his love, the enormous radiant affection that every character who encountered him describes as the most disarming and overwhelming thing they ever felt. He decided that godhood required complete absence of self, and he stripped himself down to something cold and directed and utterly purposeful. This is the figure you are chasing through the land of shadow. Not the kind, gentle boy the legends describe, the thing Miquella became when he decided that kindness was not enough. The people who followed him into the land of shadow are 5 in number. They traveled through the cocoon one by one, each drawn by their devotion to him, each expecting something different and receiving something they did not expect. Lady Leda leads them, a knight of measured authority and fierce loyalty. Hornsent is there, a figure with old grievances against the very people they are traveling with. Freyja, the knight who fought for millennia. Ansbach, the former attendant of Mog, who followed out of something between guilt and purpose. And Theolier, a quiet man who follows Saint Trina, who is Miquella's other half, his sleeping echo. The Tarnished arrives into this group as an outsider, another person drawn by Miquella's grace, and immediately the tensions within the group begin to surface. Sir Ansbach's story is one of the most quietly powerful in the expansion. He served Mog. He was the most valued attendant of the Lord of Blood, a man whose lord kept Miquella as a trophy and whose dynasty was built on abduction and exploitation. Ansbach knows this. He is not comfortable with it. When Michaela sheds his grace, when Leda tries to rally the group to continue serving what Michaela has become, Ansbach is the first to ask what they are actually following now. He investigates. He finds letters. He finds evidence that Michaela's plan involves something called Consort Radon, a resurrection and binding of one of the most powerful warriors in the world to serve as Michaela's divine spouse. That this whole journey has been in service of establishing a new divine order built on Michaela's now cold, purposed will. Ansbach shares what he finds. Leda, who has organized her entire identity around Michaela's service, cannot accept it. She decides Ansbach is a traitor. There is a reckoning coming, a point in the journey where the group fractures, where choices have to be made about which side of the line you stand on, where helping Ansbach means fighting Leda's other loyalists, where helping Leda means turning on the Questline's most honest voice. Thiolier is somewhere in the middle of all of this, literally and figuratively. He is devoted not to Michaela, the project, but to Saint. Trina, the aspect of Michaela that is still soft, still dreaming, still the gentle thing that everyone who loved the original Michaela was actually in love with. You find Saint Trina at the bottom of the Stone Coffin Fissure, a surreal underground garden where purple water lily flowers drift in pools of impossible light, and she reclines like something between a goddess and a sleeping child. She speaks to you only if you drink her nectar, which kills you, which brings you to a death space where she can reach you. She speaks slowly and with the quality of someone not entirely sure where the boundary between dream and waking falls for them. She tells you that Michaela's godhood would be his prison. She tells you he must be killed. She asks for forgiveness for him, not for his actions, but for what he has become, for the cost of the thing he decided to do to himself. Thiolier does not believe her when you pass her words to him. He gets angry. He thinks you are lying to protect something, to undercut something, to wedge between him and the person he loves. He has traveled an enormous distance for Saint Trina, has given up most of what he had for this devotion, and being told that what he loves is asking for its own end is not something he can receive immediately. He needs time. He needs to drink the nectar himself, to die himself, to hear it from her directly. Eventually, he does, and the anger in him shifts into something sadder and more resolved. He comes with you to the final confrontation, where Michaela, having bound Radon to him and assumed the last shape of his divine project, waits. Thiolier fights beside you, a quiet, unremarkable man who is perhaps the bravest person in the land of shadow, because he is fighting for the right reasons, even though none of the reasons feel good. The ending of the Shadow of the Erdtree is one of the most emotionally complex conclusions in the whole game. You are not fighting a villain. Michaela was never a villain. He was a person who loved too much, and then decided love was the obstacle and cut it out of himself. And the thing that remained, the cold, purposeful divine architect, is what you stand against. The rightness of defeating him is built on the testimony of every person in the Questlines who knew what he was before and has been grieving what he became. Ansbach and his careful epistolary investigation of a truth no one wanted to find. Thiolier and his willingness to be hurt by what he loved rather than deny what it had become. Saint Trina herself, the last echo of the boy who wanted to build a haven for the afflicted, asking you to give him forgiveness by ending what he made of himself. You fight him and Radon together, and when they fall, the land of shadow exhales. Part 12. The smaller stories, the quieter lives. There are so many more. The lands between is thick with them. There is Irina, daughter of Edgar the Castellan, sitting at the bridge near Weeping Peninsula, with the stillness of someone who knows the future and has decided to face it without theatrics. She wants you to take a letter to her father at Castle Morn, where the misbegotten have risen and he is trapped. The letter is a plea. She wants him to leave, to come to her, to choose her over the duty he cannot put down. The end of her quest line does not go well. It almost never does. But the walk to Castle Morn and back, carrying that letter, is one of the quietest acts of care in the game. There is Brother Corhin, a traveling cleric of the Golden Order, sincere and earnest and slightly overpowered by the scale of the world he has found himself in. He attaches himself to the enigmatic Gold Mask, a man who wanders the lands between in silence, wrapped in robes and a golden mask, performing a kind of ambulatory meditation on the perfectibility of the order. Corin translates for him. He conveys Goldmask's silent wisdom to you with the enthusiasm of a student who has found their teacher and cannot believe their luck. The two of them wander together, arriving at various high places to contemplate the Erdtree, speaking in the language of devotion about what a better order might look like. Their questline leads to the mending rune of perfect order, a path toward an ending that reconstructs the Golden Order with the flaws acknowledged and theoretically corrected. Goldmask dies in a place called the Mountaintops of the Giants, near the edge of everything, having written his final rune in the snow with his fingers before the cold took him. Corin finds him. The words on the page after that describe a grief that has no outlet except service to the work. There is Sorcerer Rogier, found perching in Stormvile after you clear it, who is investigating the Knight of the Black Knives with the careful distance of an academic who has gotten too personally close to his subject. He is fading. The arcane injuries he sustained during his investigation have marked him, and he is going to die from them. And he knows it. And he continues anyway because the question matters to him more than his remaining time. He passes his knowledge to Ranni's questline, like a baton he will not be there to see cross the finish line. His armor description says he was a good man who got further into the dark than he intended. There is Dialos Hoslow, the fiery young nobleman from House Hoslow, who arrives at Round Table Hold, looking for his missing servant Lanya with the specificity of someone who needs this particular search to mean something. Lanya is dead by the time he finds her, killed by Volcano Manor's assassins, and Dialos's response is to join the manor and become an assassin himself, which is either the grief-talking or a genuine ideological conversion or some combination that he himself probably cannot parse. He ends up in Jarburg, among the living jars, a man who tried to be a warrior for one cause, and then another, and found neither of them suited the person he actually was, trying to be a protector in a small, quiet place for small, quiet creatures who need one. Jar Bairn, the small child jar of Jarburg, loves him completely and without reservation, and when Dialos dies from his accumulated injuries in Jarburg's peaceful lanes, Jar Bairn mourns him with a clarity and a completeness that most human characters in the game cannot manage. There is white-faced Vare, who greets you at the very beginning of the game with the specific condescension of someone who needs you to be lesser than him to feel comfortable. His questline leads you to Mogwyn Palace via a series of tasks that reveal him to be a loyal servant of Mog, a man who dressed his subservience up as guidance and his cruelty up as test. His eventual defeat is satisfying, in the way the defeats of people who were rude to you when you were small are always satisfying. There is Sorcerer Selen, the Academy sorceress imprisoned in a cell in Waypoint Ruins, who sends you across the world to recover primeval sorceries and the wisdom of dead masters, whose quest culminates in either the restoration of her proper form or a transformation into a mass of faces and grief, depending on which side of her divided loyalties you honor. She is brilliant and obsessive and not kind, and her ending is one of the more philosophically ugly in the game, not because she suffers, but because of why she suffers and who she becomes in the process of getting what she wanted. There is Latenna the Albinoric, the archer who asks you to carry her as a spirit ash to apostate derelict in the consecrated snowfield, where the giant white wolf she rides can be reunited with its kin. She sits on the wolf's back even as an ash. She is going home, or near enough to it, and the trip is yours to make on her behalf. When you complete it, she says, "Thank you," with the simplicity of someone who has been carrying the hope of it for a very long time. There is Latenna's counterpart Albus, the old Albinoric hiding in a pot in the village of the Albinorics, who gives you the second half of the Haligtree secret medallion, handing you the key to a place he can never go himself, trusting you with it, because what else can he do? What else is there but to give the thing you are carrying to whoever looks like they might be going in the right direction? There is Melina herself, the woman who appears without a maiden's mark, and offers to be your companion anyway, who burns herself alive at the Forge of Giants so that you can continue, whose sacrifice is so quietly performed that it is easy to miss what it costs her. She is the most present of all the companions, the most consistently beside you, and the most completely selfless in a world where selflessness is almost always a form of strategy. Part 13. Sorcerer Selen, Witch Hunt, and the Price of Knowledge. Sorcerer Selen is brilliant. That is the first thing you notice before you understand the shape of what her brilliance has done to her and what it will eventually make of her. You find her in Waypoint Ruins in western Limgrave, crouched behind a fog gate in a cellar that smells of old stone and magic, imprisoned by a sentry stone seal that has been holding her in place for long enough that she has furnished the space with whatever made it livable. She teaches sorceries. She is incisive and slightly sharp in the way of academics who have long since decided that intellectual tolerance has limits. She gives you work. Her story is about primeval sorcery, the oldest and most forbidden kind. The Academy of Raya Lucaria, that enormous wheel of a building that spins endlessly above the Liornia lakes, is the center of magical scholarship in the lands between. It is also an institution, and institutions have rules about what knowledge is permitted, what avenues of inquiry are sanctioned, what sorceries a scholar may study without becoming something the Academy considers dangerous. Primeval sorcery predates the Academy. It predates the Golden Order. It was developed in an era when the stars were different, and magic was wilder, and the people who worked with it did not yet have categories for what they were handling. The Academy banned it. The scholars who pursued it, who refused to stop pursuing it, were expelled, stripped of their status, scattered. They were called primeval current sorcerers, and the Academy hunted them. Master Lusat was one of them. He sits inside a cave called Celia Hideaway, behind a door that requires a special key, crystallized from within, his body transformed by the accumulated weight of the sorceries he performed, still alive in the most technical sense, his mind somewhere far out in the cold between stars. He gives you Stars of Ruin, the most powerful glintstone magic in the game, with the abstracted generosity of someone who has already given away everything, except the specific knowledge he was made of. Master Azur is the other. He sits in the southeastern Altus Plateau, crystallizing in the same manner, a mirror of Lusat, two old men at the ends of their roads who spent their whole lives chasing a kind of understanding that cost them their human legibility. He gives you Comet Azur, the most dramatic offensive spell, a continuous lance of compressed starlight that hits like a decision about the nature of reality. Selen was their student. She studied under both of them, absorbed what they knew, and kept going. The Academy eventually discovered what she was studying and expelled her, stripped her of her status, ballista'd her with a sentence of perpetual imprisonment. She is there in the cellar because she was caught, not because she stopped. Her questline asks you to gather the knowledge of her masters and bring it back to her. You carry Lusat and Azur's primal glintstone to her, and she can work with these. She has a plan. She wants to rejoin the Academy, not as a petitioner or a reformed scholar asking forgiveness, but as someone who has learned more than anyone still inside the Academy's walls and intends to prove it. She wants recognition. She wants the research to be acknowledged. She wants what people who have spent their lives pursuing something true always want, for the truth to be admitted. The moment of her return to the Academy is handled through a questline split. Two summon signs appear near the full moon Queen Renala's chamber. One is Selen's sign, Golden, asking you to help her in her bid to take her rightful place in the Academy. The other is a group of Academy sorcerers who want to stop her and contain her magic. If you help Selen win, she transforms. This is where the questline becomes genuinely dark. Selen, in her victory, in her absorption of the primeval sorceries she spent her life recovering, does not become a triumphant scholar with a chair in the Academy and a window office. She becomes a mass, a tangled globe of glintstone faces, dozens of them, all half-recognizable, the features of every sorcerer whose knowledge she absorbed over the decades of her study, fused into one enormous and incomprehensible thing. She wanted primeval current sorcery badly enough to pay the biological cost it apparently extracts, which is the dissolution of the boundary between self and knowledge. She became the knowledge. She stopped being Selen and became the archive of everything Selen knew and wanted to know, and could not stop wanting to know. Her staff and her gear are there to loot. The familiar sharp voice is not. Selen's story is not about being a good person or a bad person. It is about what happens when genuine intelligence is combined with genuine obsession, and no one, anywhere in the chain of that person's life, was ever willing to say yes to them. The Academy refused her. The world refused her. She found the doors locked everywhere she pushed, and so She pushed until she broke through and kept going, into the other side of the thing she had been chasing, which was everything, and also no longer her. She is the most extreme version of a pattern that runs through all of Elden Ring's scholars. Knowledge pursued past the point of the pursuer's ability to contain it reshapes the container. You see it with the Volcano Manor scholars and their serpent god. You see it with Roderika's chrysalism and her gift of spirit tuning. You see it in Corrin's quiet faith and Goldmask's silence at the edge of the world. The question of how much you can know before knowing changes you is not just a video game question. Part 14. Roderika and Smithing Master Hugh, and the quiet center of the hold. There is a woman sitting outside of Stormhill's shack early in the game who looks like she has decided to become a part of the landscape. Her name is Roderika. She is wrapped in a red cloak, and she has the stillness of someone who has been sitting with a decision for long enough that the sitting has become the decision. She came to the lands between with a group of fighters from the lands of reeds, companions she traveled with on a ship through the Omen King's fog. They went to Stormvale Castle. They did not come back in any meaningful sense. What came back from Stormvale was not the people she set out with, but something that still had their shape, grafted together by Godric the Grafted, their limbs and features added to his collection. Roderika carries the guilt of being the one who didn't go. She stayed outside. She tells you this without drama, in the flat voice of someone who has reviewed the moment many times and has not been able to find a version of the story where she should feel differently about it. She gives you the sitting sideways gesture, which is exactly what it sounds like, and a missionary's cookbook. She asks you to tell the chrysalids she left behind that she is sorry. Inside Stormvale, near a pile of bodies, there is a golden seed and a cluster of chrysalid spirit forms, the echoes of the people Roderika's companions became. If you bring this back to her, something shifts. She does not feel better in any straightforward way, but she begins to think about what she can do rather than only what she failed to prevent. She has a gift. She is a spirit tuner, a person with the rare ability to listen to spirit ashes and help them become more powerful. It is not a combat ability. It is a quality of attention, a specific kind of care. She can hear what an ash needs and provide it, the way someone good with plants knows which ones need more water and which need more light without being told. She ends up at Round Table Hold, and there she finds Hugh. Hugh is the armorer of the hold, a hunched and ancient blacksmith chained to his anvil by some compulsion he does not fully understand, unable to leave, unable to rest. He has been there as long as the hold has existed. He upgrades your weapons with the focused competence of someone who has done this so many times, it has become its own form of meditation. He does not complain about the chain. He does not explain it. He simply hammers. His one ambition, expressed with the careful hopefulness of someone who does not allow themselves many ambitions because the disappointment has been too costly, is to forge a weapon worthy of a god. He believes the tarnished might be the one, finally, after all the others who have passed through. He says this not to flatter you, but with the genuine desire of an artist who has been working for a very long time toward a completion he has not yet reached. Roderika sits down across from him and begins to learn. They have, across the course of the game if you check in on them, a relationship that develops in the careful, incremental way of two people who are not sure how to ask for the thing they need, but keep showing up anyway. She wants to be useful, and she wants to stop feeling like someone who was left behind when the important things happened. He wants someone to talk to who is not a ghost or a tarnished passing through on their way to something larger. They become, in the language of the hold, colleagues, friends, maybe. The hold is a transient space, and everyone in it is in motion towards something. Hugh and Roderika are the still point of it, the place you return to, the people who are there when you come back from wherever you went. When the hold changes in the late game, when the Erdtree burns and the world reshuffles and everything everyone was building toward either arrives or doesn't, Hugh and Roderika are still there. He is still at his anvil. She is still learning. The chain is still there, but the weight of it seems somehow lighter in the light of someone choosing to stay beside it rather than leaving it. If the world gets an Elden Lord who rebuilds something worth living in, Hugh will have forged the weapons that made it possible. If it doesn't, he will have been a craftsman doing his craft for as long as there was someone who needed him. Either way, he was there. Part 15. Gurranq, Beast Clergyman, Malekith, and the weight of a sealed rune in the bestial sanctum in the northeastern reaches of Caelid, up past the dragons and the rotten landscape, and through a sending gate that D offers to mark on your map, there is a large dark room, and in it sits a figure unlike anything else in the lands between. Gurranq, beast clergyman, he is enormous and dark and shaped like nothing quite human, hunched forward at his altar with the posture of something that has been sitting in one place for a very long time and has made an accommodation with the discomfort of it. His face is partially hidden. His voice is low and controlled in the way of someone exercising control deliberately, as a practice, because without it, something would happen. He hungers for Deathroot. This is the most immediate and practical thing about him. Bring him Deathroot, the corrupted nodules that bloom from the Erdtree's roots where Godwyn's death in life has spread, and he will give you beast incantations of extraordinary power. Each piece of Deathroot he eats makes him briefly lose himself, lunging at you, and then he catches himself and thanks you, and the transaction continues. He consumes the corruption to contain it. He eats the evidence of Godwyn's spread to keep it from spreading further. He is Malekith. This is revealed elsewhere, not by Gurranq himself, but by lore connections and by the fact that you fight Malekith, the Black Blaidd, in crumbling Farum Azula, and the fight shifts midway into a form you recognize. Gurranq, the beast clergyman, eating Deathroot in his sanctum, and Malekith, the ancient Black Blaidd warrior of Queen Marika, are the same being at different points in what is either time or something time-adjacent. Malekith sealed the rune of death inside himself at Marika's direction. He became the container for the thing that could kill gods. He has carried it for longer than the lands between has existed in its current form, and the carrying of it has done things to him, the same way that carrying anything too heavy for too long does things to the person carrying it. He is still Malekith. He is also Gurranq, the hungry clergyman who eats corruption at a stone altar in the northeast, who flinches toward violence and catches himself and says sorry. The two of them are the same sacrifice expressed in two modes, the moment of acceptance and the long endurance of the thing accepted. When you fight Malekith and he falls, the rune of death is released back into the world. The immortal demigods begin to die properly. The Erdtree's immunity to destined death is lifted. This is necessary for the story's conclusion. It is also the death of the being who carried that burden for the longest time, who ate Deathroot in the dark so that the corruption could not spread, who never asked anyone to acknowledge what the carrying cost. He does not ask you to remember him. He does not leave a journal or a letter or a final statement about the significance of his sacrifice. He just was what he was, as completely as he could be, and when you end him, the rune of death falls out of him like something dropped. There is a gentleness in the way Gurranq speaks to you at his sanctum, underneath the hunger, underneath the loss of control. He thanks you each time. He says the gifts you bring help. He does not explain what they help with because the explanation would require a kind of vulnerability he has not practiced. But you can feel the gratitude in it, the relief of each small consumption, each small containment. He has been doing this alone for a very long time. Part 16. White-faced Vare and the Lord of Blood's favor. There is a man at the beginning of the game who greets you at the first step with something that could generously be described as condescension, and more accurately described as contempt. He is white-faced Vare, and he is dressed in white robes and white bandages, and he calls you maidenless, which is both technically accurate at that point in the game, and delivered with a relish that suggests he has been waiting to say it. He tells you to follow the guidance of grace toward the Round Table Hold, and then he watches you go with the satisfaction of someone who has performed their part of a script and is now interested in what happens next. He is, in every external feature, an NPC greeter, the first friendly face you encounter after character creation, the welcome to the world moment. He is also a devoted servant of Mog, Lord of Blood. His questline is a slow reveal of the manipulation running underneath that initial geniality. He asks you to invade Other Tarnished, to fulfill a religious requirement of the Dynasty of Blood, to stain a cloth called the Lord of Blood's favor in the blood of a maiden. He asks this cheerfully, as favors, as initiations into something exclusive and desirable that he is graciously allowing you to approach. When you have done enough of what he asks, he marks Mogwyn Palace on your map. This is a significant unlock. Mogwyn Palace is a late-game secret area, accessible through his questline, much earlier than the game's natural progression would take you there, a shortcut to one of the most rune-dense farming locations in the game, and a boss fight with one of the more distinctive and lore-significant demigods. The palace is a place of red water and red stone, where the servants of Mog's blood cult walk among pools of crimson that catch the light like something beautiful and faintly wrong. The aesthetic of it is genuinely striking, and whatever crimes Mog committed against Miquella, the man had a gift for architecture. Vare's ending, after all the cheerful manipulation, is to become an invasion target himself. You find him standing in Mogwyn Palace, and if you confront him there in the questline's final stages, the mask comes off entirely. He is not charming anymore. He is fierce, and the fierceness makes him more honest, and the honesty makes him, in a perverse way, more interesting than he was when he was pretending. He dies with the conviction of someone who believed in his cause. The dynasty of blood, the elevation of Mog's bloodline to divine status, the dream of a lord powerful enough to challenge the greater will from below. It was always a doomed project. Mog took Miquella and kept him in a cocoon and called it love, and Miquella was already elsewhere when the Tarnished arrived, already shed his grace and left his body, and set in motion the events of the shadow of the Erdtree. Vare served a master who was gone before the servant could complete the service. That too is a kind of tragedy, if a small one. Part 17. Irina, Edgar, and the Letter That Changes Nothing. This is one of the shortest quest lines in the game, and one of the ones that sits the longest after it is over. Irina is a young blind woman sitting beside the road at the southern end of the Weeping Peninsula, which is called that for a reason. She is quiet and slightly frightened, and she asks you for something simple, to take a letter to her father, Edgar, who is a castellan at Castle Morn, at the peninsula's southern tip. The castle has been overrun by misbegotten, those large feral creatures who were enslaved by the nobility and have now risen against their enslavers, and Edgar is still there, guarding his post, which is what castellans do even when the thing they are guarding no longer exists in any practical sense. The letter is from Irina to her father. It says that she loves him. It says she wants him to come to her, to leave the castle, to stop doing the thing that will eventually kill him. It is a very simple letter, the kind written by someone who does not know how to ask for what they need obliquely, and has decided to try directness instead. Edgar reads it when you give it to him. He says he is glad she is safe. He does not leave. He is a man organized around duty in the way that some men of his generation are organized around duty, not because it is all he is, but because it is the frame that makes everything else make sense to him. A castellan's job is to hold the castle. He holds the castle. That Irina needs him more than the castle needs him is a true thing, but it is a different kind of truth than the one he has spent his life honoring. When you return to Irina after delivering the letter, you find her dead. She was killed while you were gone, by the misbegotten, or by some unnamed violence of the road. She is just there, a body in the grass at the side of the path, small and still, the same spot where you stood with her a few hours of game time ago, and she handed you her careful, hopeful letter. Edgar comes, eventually. He finds her, and he is never the same after, in the way that certain losses reorganize a person's entire moral architecture. He becomes Castellan Edgar, then Edgar the Revenger, an invader who appears in multiple locations with the specific aggression of someone who has transferred all of his grief into motion. He will fight you. He tells you why, if you give him the chance, which is that he failed her, and the only thing left that makes sense is to keep fighting until something ends it. His final appearance is at the Revenger's shack in Liornia, and you will fight him there, and he will die. And none of the fighting or the dying gives Irina's letter anywhere new to go. Irina wrote a letter asking her father to choose her. He read it and chose the castle. The castle was taken anyway. She died. He is destroyed by it. The choice he made did not even preserve the thing he chose it for. The letter itself is a key item. The weathered dagger that Fia later gives you is more famous, but Irina's letter is perhaps the more human tragedy, the most recognizable shape. A child writing to a parent not coming, the child not waiting long enough. Part 18. Brother Corin, Gold Mask, and the Perfect Order. Brother Corin is a traveling cleric who appears first at the Round Table Hold, sitting by the fire with the cheerful practicality of someone who has internalized the Golden Order deeply enough that it gives him genuine comfort, rather than merely obligation. He sells incantations. He shares theology. He speaks of the two fingers with the affection of a devoted congregant who has found his faith to be actually, reliably sustaining. He is looking for someone. His pilgrimage is attached to a figure called Goldmask, a wandering sage who travels the lands between in near total silence, wrapped in golden robes with a mask that hides his face entirely, performing something that looks, from the outside, like ambulatory meditation. Goldmask has been working on a problem for a very long time, the problem of the imperfect golden order, the question of what the order should be in its ideal form, the theological inquiry into how law and grace might be reconciled without flaw. He does not speak. You cannot communicate with him directly. Everything he has to say comes through Corin, who has learned to interpret his gestures and his positions and the particular quality of his silences. Corin translates with the enthusiasm of a gifted student who has found the teacher they have been looking for, and there is something genuinely moving about watching him, about the way his faith deepens through the work of serving as Goldmask's voice. The quest asks you to observe Goldmask's positions in significant locations across the lands between, to report back to Corhin, to carry the dialogue between the sage and the world that Goldmask himself cannot or will not conduct directly. You are the interpreter's assistant, which is a smaller role than you usually play, and the smallness of it is appropriate. Goldmask's conclusion, the rune he finally writes in the snow on the mountaintops of the giants in a gesture that uses his whole body, is a theological statement about the nature of a perfected order. Not the one that exists, not the one that imprisoned omens and made misbegotten into slaves and classified so many kinds of lives as lesser. A different order, one that accounts for the complexity of actual existence rather than the cleanliness of a system that never had to encounter a real person. The mending rune of perfect order, which allows one of the 6 endings, is his answer, worked out over a lifetime of travel and silence and thought. He dies in the snow before you can bring him news of whether the answer was right. He finished the work, and then he stopped, the way things that have been complete a long time eventually stop. Corin finds him. He grieves with the particular quality of someone who has been preparing for a loss and discovers, when it arrives, that preparation changes nothing about the weight of it. He carries the rune forward. He serves the conclusion of the work he spent the game devoted to. It is easy, in a game of demigod conflicts and cosmic endings, to forget about the people who just tried to answer good questions carefully. Goldmask asked what a perfect order would actually look like, and spent his life trying to find out. Corin gave him a voice and gave you a guide, and kept the faith warm enough to sustain both of them. In the economy of the lands between, this is not nothing. In the economy of anything, this is not nothing. Part 19. Rhea, Zorayas, and the kindness of the manor. There is something worth returning to. About Rhea specifically, the young woman who works as Tanith's scout, who greets you near a telescope in Liornia and asks for your help recovering her stolen necklace with a mixture of embarrassment and relief. Rhea is composed. She is gracious and pleasant, and conducts herself with the careful poise of someone who has been told, implicitly, that being easy to be around is very important for someone like her. She is professional about the necklace situation, grateful without being excessive, and when she teleports you to Volcano Manor, she is a genuinely good host, making introductions, showing you around, giving you the information you need to navigate the place. She does not tell you what she is until the questline forces it. Zorayas is the name she uses for her true form. She is the daughter of Rykard and Tanith, born as a recusant of the manor, and her body's natural state is that of a large snake with a human soul and human memories and human desires, and the persistent humiliation of knowing that the world would receive her very differently if she walked into a room in that shape, rather than the human one the potion allows her. She has been taking the potion for long enough that she cannot entirely remember what she is when she is not taking it. Or, rather, she remembers, but the potion has been the daily reality for so long that the snake feels like the interrupted state rather than the natural one. Identity, when maintained long enough by chemical intervention, starts to feel like the chemical. When she finally shows you her true form, she is ashamed and frightened, and she frames the revelation as something you should probably flee from or react to with disgust, because she has been living in anticipation of that reaction for her whole life. The kindness you can offer, if you choose it, is to stay. to talk to her normally, to treat the revelation as information rather than verdict. Patches, if his questline has reached the right point, gives her the celestial dew, which is itself an item that cleanses sin at the Church of Vows. It is a gift that acknowledges her without fixing her, which is the best kind of gift. You cannot give her a human body that is actually hers. You can give her the experience of being treated well by someone who did not have to treat her well. Her later stages in the Manor questline involve the choice of what to tell her about what her father has become. You can give her a volcanic stone, which describes the Manor and Rykard without revealing the full horror of his transformation. Or you can give her something that shows her the truth. She receives the truth with the stillness of someone who suspected it and was hoping to be wrong. When Rykard dies and the Manor dissolves and the questlines scatter, Raya is in an intermediate position that does not resolve cleanly. She is a woman made of a snake's body and a human's mind who built a life in a place that no longer exists, serving a father who is dead, under a mother who disappeared into her grief. What she does next is not something the game shows you directly, but she was kind. She was genuinely, consistently kind across the entire quest line, even in the moments where kindness was not the default, and not the expectation, and not the obvious choice. She helped you navigate the Manor. She trusted you with her true form. She did not ask you to be other than what you are. In the Manor, among all the assassination contracts and volcanic heat and serpent theology, there was a young woman with a stolen necklace who just wanted to be treated normally. If you let her, she would tell you things worth knowing about what it costs to maintain a version of yourself that other people can accept. And if you listen carefully enough, you might notice that she was never not Raya. The snake was always Raya. The potion was the story she told herself and others so that the world could tolerate what she actually was. Part 20, Egon, the Ancient Dragon, and a Grudge Worth Carrying. There is a man half buried in a swamp in Caelid screaming about a dragon. His name is Egon, and he is a dragon hunter. And the dragon he is screaming about is Baal the Dread, one of the most ancient and powerful dragons in the lands between. A creature so enormous and so violent that it stands apart from even the other elder dragons as something singular and terrible. Egon has been injured by Baal. Badly, badly injured, in a way that has left him partially buried in the Dragon's Maw region of Caelid, unable to move freely, reduced to screaming his hatred into the sky in the hope that someone will hear him and go finish what he started. He is, in the way of great haters, very nearly magnificent in his conviction. He does not present his grudge as complicated or philosophical. He wants Baal dead. This is the total content of his remaining life's purpose, and he is fully at peace with that. When you encounter him in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, he has traveled to the Land of Shadow, following Baal's presence there with the determination of someone who has been pursuing this dragon across geography and perhaps time. He is still injured. He still screams. He is still the most committed person in any room he is in. His questline in the expansion asks you to help him get close enough to the place where the priestess of Baal can be found, and eventually to confront Baal directly. Egon's summon sign is available for the Bailey fight, and fighting alongside him is one of the more unexpectedly moving moments in the DLC. He is not a particularly powerful ally. He cannot do what you can do, but he is there, screaming and swinging, every ounce of his remaining strength directed at the thing he has hated for what is clearly a very long time. When Baal falls, Egon's reaction is not triumphant in any dignified way. It is raw and loud, and exactly what you would expect from a man who has spent years keeping a wound open, because the wound was the only thing that kept him moving. He has done the thing is done. What comes after, for someone organized entirely around a grudge, is never as simple as peace. But the questline ends with Egon having been heard, having been helped, having finished the thing that would not let him rest. Sometimes that is what a story is, not a lesson or a transformation or a redemptive arc. Just a man who needed someone to fight beside him, and, eventually, found one. Part 21. The Albinaurics and the Weight of a Hidden People. There is an entire people in Elden Ring who are dying. The Albinaurics are pale, long-lived, and regarded by the Golden Order as lesser beings, incomplete creations, something between human and something else, born from an attempt to manufacture life rather than to live it. The first generation of Albinaurics are small and covered with smooth, pale skin, and they live in the village of the Albinaurics on a hillside in Liurnia, which is itself being slid into the lake by the slow corruption of the rot beneath it. The second generation are tall and white-furred, and they are the ones who know how to use the Hidetree's secret medallion, the way to Miquella's Hidettree, the sanctuary he built specifically for people the Order rejected. One of them, Latena, carries half the medallion and will trade it to you in exchange for being carried to apostate derelict in the consecrated snowfield, where the great white wolf that walks beside her spirit form can be with its kind. Albus, hidden in a pot in the village, carries the other half. He gives it to you because he cannot use it himself. He is old, and the village is dying, and the wolf is gone, and all he has is the medallion and the knowledge that someone might need it. He gives it to a stranger because strangers are what he has. Because the Tarnished showed up at the edge of a ruined village in a slipping hillside, and that was sufficient. That was enough. That was the person who had arrived to receive what he had to give. The Albinaurics were persecuted by the Golden Order, used as resources by various factions, turned into livestock by white-faced Vare for the Blood Cult's favor, had their village assaulted during the game's events by Godric's forces looking for the Hidettree medallion pieces. They built a life in the margins of the world, in the places no one else wanted, in slipping hillsides and underground rivers, and they carried their knowledge of Miquella's sanctuary with them, because Miquella was the only divine figure who had ever looked at them and said, "You belong here too." Miquella built the Hidettree for people like them. He is gone now. The Hidettree is still there, incomplete, and Millennia's knights still protect its upper branches. The Albinaurics still find their way there, drawn by something that predates the god's disappearance, following the same gravity of belonging that Miquella set in motion before he left. Latena, when you carry her spirit ash to the apostate derelict and she completes her purpose there, gives you the larval tear she was keeping. She says thank you with the simplicity of someone who has been carrying a thing a long time and is glad to set it down. The wolf is with its kind. She can rest. The village of the Albinaurics, after the game's events, continues to slip into the lake. Whether the people in the Hidettree find what Miquella intended for them, whether the incomplete sanctuary is enough, whether the world that comes after the Tarnished's ending is the kind of world where the Albinaurics are permitted to exist in peace, the game does not say. It rarely says. It sets things in motion and trusts you to think about what happens next. Part 22. The Spirit Ashes and Their Silences. There is a form of NPC in Elden Ring that is never spoken about as much as the walking, talking questline characters, but that is full of stories if you read the descriptions carefully. The Spirit Ashes, the summoned remnants of the dead, each have item descriptions that are tiny complete tragedies or small complete lives, summarized in 3 to 5 sentences. Latena, the Albinauric's ash. She sat on her wolf because she could not walk, and she did not stop moving. Lutel the Headless, a knight who patrolled the Tombs Ward, who made her home among the dead, whose commitment to her duty went on past the point where she had a head. Roderica's starting gift, the spirit jellyfish ashes, the spirit of a young girl, wandering, given by Roderica, whose own wandering found a still point at the hold. There are summons who participated in the Radahn fight, warriors who died in that impossible battle, and still answer the call from beyond it. There are the wolves who can be summoned in the early game, 3 of them, unnamed but present, with the quiet loyalty of animals who have decided this is their person, and that is the whole of their commitment to the world. The Lone Wolf Ashes, your very first summon, given by Ranni in the Church of LA, are small and fast and die fairly easily, and yet, Ranni gave them to you. Whatever she was doing in that night church meeting, whether it was reconnaissance or kindness or both, she gave you something that would keep you company in the early sections of the game, where everything is trying to kill you and nothing is explaining itself. 3 small wolves who have decided you are worth dying for. Ash summons are the dead choosing to be present. They are remnants of people and creatures who loved something enough that the loving outlasted the life. The game has over 100 of them, and almost every one has a description that tells you exactly who they were and why they are still here, and what the still here is in service of. That is perhaps the quietest and largest statement the game makes about what matters. That what you loved enough in your life will stay in some form after you are gone. that the people who carried something important enough will find it carried forward by others, that being a remnant is not the same as being lost. These are not all 135. The number in the title is honest. If you count every named questline, every NPC with multiple dialogue steps, every DLC character, every minor arc that ends in a death or a departure, or a small, completed moment of human purpose. The lands between is extraordinarily dense with them. From the first step in Limgrave to the final confrontation at the Erdtree, people are living and dying and asking for things and giving things, and sometimes, briefly, experiencing exactly the thing they came here for. Part 13. What all of it adds up to. Elden Ring is a game about power, yes. About cosmic hierarchy and divine politics and the machinery of fate. About demigods and outer gods and the arguments between them that destroy continents. But it is more fully, more persistently, more human a game about the question of whether a life can be completed on its own terms. Blaidd could not be completed on his own terms. He was made to be something specific, and the thing specific to him fought the thing made for him until neither one remained. Millicent completed herself exactly as she intended. The terms were hers. The ending was hers. Alexander completed himself with a cheerfulness that should be impossible in this world, and is not, which is maybe the most subversive thing in the game. Fia completed herself through loving something that most people would say was unlovable, and the question of whether that makes her completion beautiful or tragic is, deliberately, left entirely to you. The Dung Eater's terms were terrible, and he met them entirely. Hyetta's terms were formed in the dark, and she met them entirely. Bach's terms were negotiated in the middle of his own story, and he met them, with your help. And he is still out there somewhere, altering armor himself. FromSoftware builds these worlds to be inhospitable, to push back against you, to have a gravity that resists completion and progress and happy endings. And inside that resistance, the questlines persist. People want things. They move toward what they want. Some of them reach it. Some of them fall short. All of them are real enough that when they fall, you feel something. That is what the lands between is at its best. Not a world to defeat or a story to decode. A space populated by people doing their best under conditions that were never designed with their best interests in mind. Which, when you think about it, is a description of most of the spaces that people actually live in. You can take that thought with you into whatever is next for you tonight. Or you can set it down here, at the edge of the Grace's warmth, and let it rest until morning. The tarnished always wakes up. That is the one guaranteed thing in a world that guarantees almost nothing. No matter what happens in the night, there is a sight of lost grace somewhere ahead, and there is something worth going toward. Wherever you are right now, whatever is waiting for you on the other side of sleep, I hope you find your worth in the waking world. And I hope, between now and then, you rest so completely that the dreams that find you are gentle ones. Thank you for spending this time here. If this video brought you peace or kept you company or just gave you somewhere comfortable to let your thoughts land, please consider subscribing and leave a comment telling me which questline you would most like to hear more about. Every comment gets read. Everyone matters. Take care of yourself out there. Good night.